The best way to win your fantasy league is to draft a receiver in the late rounds who can smash his ADP. And I'm going to give you 3 guys that you should be targeting right now in your fantasy football drafts that have the opportunity to do that. I'm Dave Kluge with Football Guys, and we are going to go over 3 late round wide receivers who you should be drafting. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page. You can find that at youtube.com/footballguys. Not only are we bringing you these short videos almost every single day, but we have a ton of full-length shows that you can check out, like the Audible, the Mailbag Show, the Dynasty Show, the Launchpad, and so much more. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in, talking about 3 wide receivers that you have to draft. The first guy I want to talk about is KJ Hamler. Now, KJ Hamler is far from a household name. He was a second-round pick that was drafted a couple years ago, and injuries have kind of been the theme of his career so far. As a rookie, he wasn't able to play a full season, and he was dealing with corralling passes from guys like Drew Lock and Brett Ripien. And if you remember, it was that weird COVID year where Kendall Hinton, a practice squad wide receiver, actually started as a quarterback. So it's kind of easy to write off his rookie year and the lack of production that he had there. And then in year 2, very early in the season, he suffered a gruesome leg injury where he injured both his ACL and his hip, which each required surgery. Now he heads into year 3 with a clean bill of health, and reports out of camp from both fans, media, and teammates are that he has all of his speed back. Heading into his rookie year, Hamler was unable to run at the combine because of a hamstring injury, but he was clocked at running a 4.27 40-yard dash at his pro day, which would have blown away every other receiver coming into that 2020 class. That speed pushed him into the second round, but really his skill set has been pretty useless so far in Denver. No quarterback has really been able to unlock his skill set as a downfield receiver. Well, guess what? Russell Wilson is just the guy who can help him break out. Despite missing a few games last year with an injured finger on his throwing hand, Russell Wilson still had the 3rd most yards on deep pass attempts last year while boasting a very impressive 9-2 touchdown to interception ratio. So while he might lack the rushing upside that made him an elite fantasy option early in his career, he still has that huge arm and pinpoint balls that he can throw downfield, which should really be a help for KJ Hamler. And now with Tim Patrick presumed to be out for the season with a torn ACL, Hamler can easily solidify his role as the wide receiver 3 behind Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. Ever since being activated from the PUP list, Hamler has been drawing insane reviews from camp. You can get him pretty late in your draft, and he is a guy that possesses immense upside. Think kind of like Tyler Lockett. He might not have that weekly consistency that you want, but especially in best ball leagues and deep leagues where you're looking for spike weeks, KJ Hamler is a guy that can have huge weeks with his ability to score from anywhere on the field with that blazing speed. The next guy I want to talk about might be a little bit of no-brainer, and unfortunately the cat might be out of the bag, but I still think that there is some juice to squeeze if you're drafting George Pickens at his current ADP. Some scouts predicted that George Pickens would be drafted as a top 3 wide receiver in what was a pretty loaded wide receiver class, but character concerns pushed him to the back half of the second round. Now, when I say character concerns, this isn't a guy who is failing drug tests or getting arrested. He is a hyper-competitive athlete who has gotten in some trouble on the field. He's squirted opponents with water bottles, he's thrown some punches, he's blocked people out of bounds. Personally, I love that type of tenacity for a wide receiver, and his skill set and his talent is already showing up in camp. What I see when I look at George Pickens isn't a guy who's going to be getting in trouble in the NFL. He's a guy who just really wears his heart on his sleeves and wants to do whatever he can to win games, and sometimes lets his emotions get the best of it. But that tenacity also has some upside. After a breakout sophomore season where George Pickens looked like one of the most dominant players in college football, he tore his ACL heading into his junior year, which was his final year in college. A lot of wide receivers would have just coasted into the NFL draft knowing that he was already going to be drafted as a pretty high pick, but he fought back to come back and play the final 4 games of the season as the Georgia Bulldogs went on to a national championship run. And I think that his ability to come back from that injury when he had no real reason to do so is why the Pittsburgh Steelers took a chance on him. And now he is in camp making a name for himself, repeatedly making contested catches and drawing oohs and ahs from the crowd in Pittsburgh. Looking purely at his skill set, Pickens is an elite talent. He's big, he's tall, and he's fast, and if you've watched any of the things that I've produced before, those are the 3 traits that I cannot get enough of in a wide receiver. He has the alpha build and can take over as the wide receiver 1 on this team. Now, it's going to be a little bit tough because Deontay Johnson is there and Chase Claypool is there. And let's be honest, the Pittsburgh Steelers probably aren't going to be a powerhouse offense. But at the end of the day, you'll never regret betting on talent. And that is exactly what George Pickens is. A phenomenal talent, a guy who could have had a top 10 draft capital, but slid due to these character concerns. And those guys that slide tend to end up doing pretty well in the NFL, especially when a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers takes a chance on them. We've seen it with Chase Claypool, Martavis Bryant, Antonio Brown. They don't shy away from these guys who have character concerns, and George Pickens can be next on the list of phenomenal wide receivers to be produced by the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the best thing about George Pickens is you can get him right now in the 15th round of your draft. You don't have to pay up for him. There's almost no risk in acquiring him or KJ Hamler, who I was talking about earlier. So while these guys do have a risk that they can completely bust and flame out, you're not giving up a lot, and that low acquisition cost is what makes me so excited about drafting these high caliber players. The last guy I'm going to talk about is somebody that you have probably heard me talking about all offseason, but for whatever reason, his ADP has remained pretty stagnant. Nico Collins is a year 2 wide receiver who dealt with a ton of injuries his rookie season. And I get it, he's on the Texans. The Texans aren't a team that you can really get excited about when investing in them for fantasy football, but they are going to be forced to air the ball out a lot. And Nico Collins is already locked and loaded as the wide receiver 2 and has a chance to build off of a pretty good rookie season. Last year, Tyrod Taylor and Davis Mills were both yo-yoed on and off the bench, and it made for a pretty frustrating season for fantasy managers. But this year, Tyrod Taylor walked in free agency, and the Texans completely ignored the quarterback position in the draft and free agency, making Davis Mills the presumed starter. And when you look at the splits that Nico Collins had with Davis Mills as opposed to the other quarterbacks, he was much better with Davis Mills and drew a much better target share. Nico Collins played in 14 games last year, and only 8 of those Davis Mills started and finished in. And in those 8 games, we can look at what he did and extrapolate it over a full 17-game season. He would have had 96 targets, 53 receptions, and 833 yards. For a day 2 wide receiver, that is phenomenal production, and we can expect that going into year 2. But what really intrigues me when talking about Nico Collins are the comparisons that you can make to Michael Pittman. Both of these guys are 6'4" with massive catch radiuses. They both have a size-adjusted speed score that ranks inside the 90th percentile. They both missed exactly 3 games as rookies, and they each drew exactly 61 targets their rookie season as well. Where Michael Pittman was playing behind an aging T.Y. Hilton, Nico Collins is now playing behind an aging Brandon Cooks. Obviously, there's a little bit of an age difference there, but you get the picture that I'm trying to paint here. The stage is set for Nico Collins to have a massive breakout in year 2. Davis Mills gets a lot of flack for sliding a little bit in the draft, but he looked pretty good last season, and he actually had the 3rd best completion ranking of any rookie quarterback in NFL history. The stage is set for Nico Collins to take over as the wide receiver 2 role on a team that's going to throw the ball a lot. Davis Mills should throw for about 4,000 yards, and if Nico Collins can solidify himself as the wide receiver 2 in Houston, he could smash his ADP, and just like the other guys I've talked about, you don't have to pay up for him, getting him in the 15th or 16th round of your draft. Thank you so much for checking this video out. I hope that you were able to pull away some useful information. Please drop a thumbs up or a thumbs down on the video below and leave us a comment and let us know what you think. Thank you so much for checking this out, and I will see you next week.